Oh, excuse me. Hello, hello, hello. This is Willie Cartwright with from Save to Sane. Glad to have all of you here today with us. I don't have my trademark hat on today. I just decided to go with the bald head today. So we're good. But listen, glad to have all of you here. Whether you're joining us live or you pick this up at a later time or a later date, wherever part of the country or the world that you are tuning in from, I am certainly appreciative that you are here as we do this every other week. And so, as I said before, I am so happy and glad and appreciative to have all of you joining us today. Our topic today is going to be how to deconvert and build community. Now, we've talked about both of these topics separately before. And I sort of wanted to bring them together today to sort of talk about how to deconvert the steps and how to, I guess, properly do it. And there's no one way or no correct way. I think it's different for everyone. But then I also wanted to talk about where do we go from there? How do we build community? And then I'll tell you the impetus for this topic in just a second. But before I get started, before I get into it, I need to say thank you to a couple of people as I do every day. I mean, every time we come on the show. First is Taisha. Taisha Essick is out there. So I need to check on her. I have not seen Taisha. I have not seen your stuff on social media. I don't know what's going on. I hope everything is fine. I'm going to reach out to you and check on you. But like I said, thank you to Taisha. I know you got the family thing going on. So hopefully everything, you and the family are doing well. I keep telling you, got an open invitation to come visit us out here in Vegas, my wife and I. Speaking of that, the second person I'd like to say thank you to is my wife, Salima, who is always supportive, always behind the scenes, supporting everything that I do. Got a funny story I'll tell about that, about her and that in just a moment. But so I'm thankful to her as well. Christine, what's going on? Christine Williams, glad to have you with us. Greetings from Texas. It is almost 80 degrees here. I think we're gonna hit 91 degrees this weekend. Christine, I don't know what it is there in Texas. I'm assuming that it's getting warmer, but I don't think that is as warm there as it is here. I love it. It felt great today. I was out. As some of you may know, I do substitute teaching as part of my sort of semi-retirement. Um, Thought about going into teaching for a time, but that's probably not going to happen for a whole host of reasons. We'll do something for a little while longer. We'll continue to do this here. And so we're just sort of enjoying life, sort of filling it out as we go. I'm fortunate enough to be in that position, but I still need to do something. I'll probably do what we call, I don't think I'll ever fully retire. I will always do this, something related to this. Um, I'll probably do something else too on a part-time basis for at least as long as I'm able to. I think it keeps the brain sharp, keeps you moving. So I always do something, but I'll probably won't have to do anything in about 3 or 4 years, I guess. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying everything that I'm doing. So yeah, wanted to say that. Again. Thank you to all of you. How do we come to today's topic? Uh, I always talk about how I'm on Threads. That's my new social media platform now. I've kind of moved away from Facebook because Facebook to me is a bunch of people my age and older who are stuck in their ways. I'm still on there from time to time, but I don't post as much religious stuff as I do there. Instagram get some stuff, but Threads is. I found the community in Threads. It's an international community. At least that's what I'm finding it to be. A lot more engagement. Um, there are a lot of angry religious people, a lot of angry Christians on Threads, and so they come hard. So they are easily triggered, as I always tell them. But anyway, so I was thinking about when I talk about where I am now, my position as an atheist, as I came out as a full blown atheist a few months ago, reminding me. So my wife, I was mentioning my wife earlier, and she. So let me set the stage. My mother-in-law and my mother-in-law in particular is a very, very devout believer. However, I do think that um, she questioned some of the things that she's been taught, some of the things that she read in the Bible. She actually started off as a Muslim and then converted over to Christianity, thanks to my wife. Some, I guess now, what would be about 30 years ago or so. So she's been a devout. When I met her, she was a very, very devout Christian. I think through the transition of my wife and what my wife has been telling her and teaching her, I think she's starting to have some questions, but she's still pretty much devout. Like most African Americans in that generation, the one thing that they fear or don't tolerate or quick to write off is another African American who calls themselves an atheist. And up until this point, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law both, who my father-in-law is kind of he's sort of apathetic to religion, but if you ask him if he believes in God, he'll say, yeah. Like most men, and especially most men of that generation, these are boomers. And then my generation, Generation X, most men, although they don't go to church, they probably ain't read a Bible in decades. If you ask them if they believe in God or higher power, most of them will say yes. So they've followed me as much as they can tolerate on Facebook, but they know my position that at least at a minimum, they knew that I was a non-believer or I wasn't a Christian. Well, let me say that I wasn't a Christian because there are levels to all of this. You can not be a Christian, but still be a believer in a God or higher power. I'm not sure where they see me at, but I know they know for a fact that I'm no longer a Christian. I think my wife had told him that I wasn't a believer anymore. But I think for the first time, my wife told her mother, my mother-in-law, that I was an atheist, and she told me that it was on the phone the other night, and she mentioned it because I think her mother said something, and she was like, "Oh yeah, no, Will an atheist. That's it." So and so that got me to thinking about how do you go through the steps of deconverting, and more importantly, build another community, another family per se, because oftentimes those of us who are from a devout community, a devout family of believers, when we leave the faith, even if it's just us leaving Christianity, let alone not believing in any God, declaring yourself an atheist, you run the risk of losing friends and family members. Now, my mother-in-law and father-in-law are great. We haven't had any issue. When I'm around them, we really don't talk about it, haven't discussed it. And so everything is fine as far as I know. They haven't said anything to me personally. But I have lost other friends and friends who I've been knowing for years and years, and so that altogether got me thinking. So let's discuss the whole deconversion process and what happens. And again, it's different for everyone else, but I think more importantly for a lot of people, once you go through that, how do you reconnect? How do you find your tribe? How do you build another family, another community? And how do you find those people? And so that's sort of where this is coming from. And so as I began, um, the first steps for me, and I always make this clear to believers. Um, my positioning, me being an atheist, even before I was an atheist, when I was just questioning everything, uh, it wasn't about being angry with God. And I've said this before. It wasn't about church hurt. However, there are things that happen in the church that is unbecoming of people who say that they are followers of Jesus Christ or God or whatever, right? And for some people on the outside, or some people, they are looking at these people who are supposed to represent what Christianity, God, Jesus is like. When those people are not acting the way that we've been taught that Christians should act, but some people, it may start them to ask questions. I always use this analogy all the time. If I continuously tell people around me how great marriage is, and how great my wife is, and the marriage saved me, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, but every time they see me on the weekends, I'm out flirting with other women, trying to get phone numbers, that kind of thing. Then not only are you going to start to question me, the person, but those of you who have never been married, never been part of that institution, as we call it, you may start to question the institution of marriage, right? Especially if you think highly of me or you thought highly of me before all of this happening. And so it's no different than being a Christian. Christians are representative of their faith, their belief system, their God, or whatever. And all of this attempt to separate yourselves by saying, well, I'm not a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ. By definition, a follower of Christ is a Christian. If you look up the term Christian, by definition, it is a follower of Christ. So those are semantics, and there's no real separation. Christians tend to do that because Christianity, the word, has become toxic, especially with Christian nationalists and the evangelicals. And so in recent years, that term has become toxic, but you're still a Christian. Let me say hello to a couple of people. This is Michael Lash, 9714. First time being able to watch you. I appreciate it. You're a 68-year-old black man from Cincinnati. We used to be a Muslim in the Nation of Islam. Well, brother, you got a lot in common with my wife. Her mother was part of the Nation of Islam many, many years ago. I was in Cincinnati last October. I'll tell you, brother, I was not impressed. This was my first time in Cincinnati. I was actually there for a conference related to this topic here. I was there for a conference, spoke at a conference. But yeah, I was not impressed with the city. But glad to have you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for being on for the first time. Yeah, absolutely. 68. So you are a boomer. I'd be interested to know how you got out of that, especially at that age. And I'm not young myself, but I've met very few African American boomers who are no longer believers. And I don't know for sure if you're no longer a boomer, if you're no longer a believer. But even if you are, I appreciate having you here. We're open. We're welcome to all. We can have the discussion, the dialogue. But I certainly appreciate you being here. And so other people are saying hi to you as well. So yeah. So as I was saying, so when those things happen in the church, you may start to ask questions. That's not what causes people to leave and stop believing in a God or become atheists. It might be the beginning, it might be the impetus of you starting to read. But when you start to have questions and you go to clergy or people who you respect in the church and their faith, and you ask them these questions, and they either A, don't have answers for those questions, or B, or mislead you or become angry because you are asking those questions, then that just opens up the door even wider, and it sort of clicks in your head. There's something else going on here that I need to maybe look into. And for me, it was that. And that was early on. I mean, there was always things that didn't really make sense to me, even as a child. But as a Generation X, I was not allowed to ask questions in the church of my mother, of other adults in the church about the faith. You just had to take it on faith, and whatever they said, and pretty much was it. So it wasn't until I got older, ironically, it wasn't until I got to college and met people of other faith. Even they may not have been Christians, some were Nation of Islam. I met people for the first time in college that was from the Nation of Islam, 5%ers, Hebrew Israelites, all of that. And so that got me really interested in, okay, I need to find out more about my faith and other religions. But that was sort of the beginning. Michael said, not a believer in any supernatural gods. Hey, there you go. My man. In my Denzel voice, my man. But yeah, so good. Yeah, good. So we're glad to have you. But anyway, and so when those questions come, a lot of people like me, you start to do research, you start to read more. And in that research, I think the first thing, and again, I've said this before on this show, if I were to give advice to anyone who is in the process of deconverting and on this journey and doing research, the first thing that I would say is do as much research as you can on the origins of hell, or the biblical version of hell and heaven, and heaven, but especially hell. The fear of hell is, I think, and in my research and in education and all of that, is one of the primary, if not the primary thing that is holding a lot of believers. is that fear of going to hell. And if you can do the research and understand the origins of hell, especially the biblical version of hell, then that's sort of freeing. And so for me, that was one of the first things that I did was like, okay, where did this concept of hell come from? And is it something that I should continue to believe? The same thing with heaven. And once I broke out of that and understood the origins of hell and where it came from, and we'll do a show on the origins of hell and heaven one day if we haven't already done one. But we'll certainly do one. But needless to say, this is not a real place. There are historical origins where this come from the standpoint of stories. The biblical hell was the concepts were borrowed from other much older religions, some books out there, all of that. And so when you understand that, you take that away and you're like, okay, so now let me try to understand this person, this supernatural God, this deity. And again, much like hell, you find out that the concept um, of this God is a combination of stories and ideas borrowed, and I use the word borrowed lightly, borrowed from much older religions. This God and this Jesus character has way too many things in common with many other gods for it to be just a coincidence. And many of these gods are much older than Christianity, are much older than our concept of Jesus and the Abrahamic God. And so all of that is sort of snowballing. And so you got questions and you can't get the right answers. Now, when young people ask questions, they can fact check right on the spot. It wasn't like us. We had to go and find the information somewhere, do the research, find someone else to talk to, all of that. It's just instant, but you have the questions and you do the research. And then you get to a point. Just a second, let me say, Maurice Wheatley, what's going on? Glad to have you. Hell was a huge part of me just admitting I don't believe for decades. Yeah, hell was the first real obstacle that I had to get over. Even when and I'll say this, it shows you the power of a continuous indoctrination from a community, from social media, from entertainment, from people close to you. Even if you really think about it now in your objective mind, it sounds really like it really doesn't make sense. But if this is something that is exposed to you, indoctrinated in you at an early age, it creates in some people trauma, and there's documented evidence that believing in hell, especially for young people, can be traumatic and can go on into your adult life. And so there, and I've said this before, there are organizations out there that deal with religious trauma. Um, a part of it is from this hell. So you see the brimstone. As a matter of fact, I saw a picture earlier today on social media, and it had people in this hellfire, flames and hot, and they're screaming and yelling and arms reaching up and things popping out of their eyes and ears and whatever. Imagine, I mean, we're all adults here, but imagine seeing that and hearing that as a child, as a young child, how traumatic that would be. And so that sticks with you, and it is very hard to break away when that fear is there. Like, this is how I'm gonna spend eternity. But if you so as an adult, I was able to really think about it from an objective and a practical standpoint. I'm pretty practical, right? One of the things that I thought about was um, if the purpose of hell is to make us suffer physical pain, um, if if it's not my body that's being burned or in hell, and it's my soul, how am I supposed to feel pain? Our soul doesn't feel pain as far as I know. Well, that's one side of it. Second side of it is, from a scientific standpoint, it's never been established that a soul actually exists. And so if a soul doesn't exist, And even if it did, if it's not capable of feeling pain, if pain is part of the human flesh, the human body, and the human body is not what goes to hell, but the soul does, then there is no pain and no agony supposedly in hell. So all of these practical things, came to mind as I started to research and started to do my studies long, many, many years ago, right? Um, let's see. Oh, what's up, Neo? What's going on? Peace, Neo. Neo is here. As I always said, support Neo has a channel. If you're ready to listen to 3 or 4 or 5 hours of this at one time, then check out Neo. But Neo is in this space. Neo is fantastic. And so I encourage you to absolutely support Neo. Christine said, teach truth, justice, and correction in love. The lies must stop. Absolutely. And then Michael, our guest, said, I would love to be able to share my story, experience with you and your audience anytime. I have relatives who won't speak to me anymore. Bro, been there, done that. Yeah, you know what? We will have you on here, brother. Absolutely. Uh, Neil said, stop it, I've changed. Okay. Neil said she no longer have these 6-hour shows or 5-hour shows. So I'm guessing Neo's shows are a lot shorter. But anyway, support Neo. She has a fantastic channel. Go over there, support her. That's my partner. So yeah, do that. Yeah, Michael, we absolutely will have you on here because I think that is it is a unique experience when an African American baby boomer of that generation becomes a non-believer. It is unique enough for someone in my generation, Generation X. But I'm trying to think. I don't know anyone in my mother's who would have been my mother passed away some years ago, but that her generation, I can't remember. I don't know of anybody that I know that was not a believer. Even the neighborhood drunk back then still said he believed in God or something supernatural. So yeah, yeah, Michael, we would love to hear your story. Neo also echoed that fact. So yeah, the whole losing friends thing, Michael. And I've talked about this before on this show. When I literally when I first came out as a non-believer, and I purposely, I think it was part of the process and the growing. So I wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready to call myself an atheist when I first deconverted. I don't even think that I was really an atheist at that point. But I certainly wasn't ready because I knew the ramifications of that word in our community. But just saying that I no longer believe in God or wasn't a Christian was enough for friends, childhood friends, people I had been knowing for the better part of 40 years to literally say, I have nothing else to do with you. I can't talk to you. We can't be friends. My family was a little bit different in the sense that, and my family situation is a very, very complicated, tri-level mess. But my family members were really close to me. My mother was very devout. My mother was actually a minister at the time when I actually left in 2015. She was still alive. She passed in 2017. So I never had a face-to-face conversation with her about it, but I did mention it to her on the phone in the car that I no longer, and the way I phrased it at the time was, I no longer believe the way you believe, and then we'll talk about this when I see you in person. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and she was in Birmingham, Alabama at the time. A week later, I get a call from my sister. My sister's younger, a couple of years younger than me. All just kind of, what did you say to mama? She said that you're the Antichrist and you're gonna burn in hell and you're gonna go broke and you're coming back crying to Jesus. These were the exact words of my mother that she said to my sister about me, but she never said it to me, because that was a level of, and I use this word lightly. That was a level of reverence that my mother had for me. And I would dare say other people sort of in my family. I've always sort of been my own thinker. And so people in the family have sort of left me alone and come to expect me to be different. And so I didn't get at least a lot of face-to-face criticism from family members when they found out. My sister and my niece, and my sister and niece, they joke from time to time. My niece is 25 or 20. She might be 27 now. I have an older brother, my nephew. Actually, both of them have called me from time to time to sort of ask me my opinion about certain things in religion. They're still devout believers, but they do have questions, and so they call me because uh, speaking to other members of their family, including their mother, which is my sister, my only sister. They can't get an objective. They feel like that her opinion is not going to be objective, right? Um, but they like because I try to stay objective with them, and what I do is say, listen, this is your life. Read everything you can get your hands on. Do the research and make the decision for yourself. Because at a younger age, you didn't have that. That wasn't part of what you were able to do. Same thing with me. And so that's what I tell the both of them. And as far as I know right now, and I've talked to them recently, they both, my niece and nephew, both are still believers. I think my nephew, who's 35, has a lot of questions, but he still believes. So yeah, so family members, it wasn't as much. They just sort of just won't talk about it with me. Friends, however, I've gotten everything, Michael. I've got everything from we can't be friends to something bad is going to happen to you. You better stop playing with God. He's going to punish you. All of that. From people who don't know me and who've seen me post stuff and quote stuff and have dialogue with people, I've gotten the death threats. You're going to die. If I ever see you, God is going to do this to you or da da da. So all of that. And I'm not even, one of the, there are not a lot of vocal African Americans in this space, right? I can name you, a handful that I've read, researched, been around, talked to, had conversations with, presented on a panel with, but it's not a whole lot. And one in particular, Jeremiah Camara, he and I met a few years ago. We got introduced by a mutual friend. He and I had dinner. I think I've told this story before. He was extremely careful with agreeing to meet with me. Obviously, he didn't know me, but once we started talking and had dinner, he revealed to me that he has to be extremely careful because he gets real, some like death threats, like literal death threats, even when he's traveling in other countries and speaking. And so his wife is always careful about what he's doing. And so look up Jeremiah Camaro. He does some like short videos about religion. Very, 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 very well done. A great guy. I think I quoted him in my book, which I forgot to introduce my book to show my book. We'll do that. But anyway, what did I leave off? So yeah, so you got the questions. You've done the research. And now you have to decide as to whether or not, and this is in the process of deconverting, you have to decide as to whether or not you're going to believe the researched information or you're going to hold on to what you've been taught and what you've been indoctrinated into in the religion. And that's the crossing, which direction are you going in? Got a couple of more people. Maurice Wheatley said his documentary about the church is also. Oh, it is absolutely. Yep, Jeremiah's documentary. Absolutely, you guys have. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. He has several about the church, but yeah, absolutely. And so you get to the point where you have to make a decision. Am I going to continue to follow the information that I've been researching, even though it hurts to my core? It goes against everything that I've been taught, everything that I've experienced, and everything that I may still believe? Or am I going to hold on to it and sort of ignore it, put it in the closet, and then go to church and still hear this stuff that doesn't really align with the things that I've been researching? And that's when you decide to make the choice. You either become agnostic about it, you become apathetic about it, you stay, you become an atheist, or you become something in the middle, which where you become spiritual, where you say, well, I believe that there is something out there, right? It might not be what we've been taught, the Abrahamic God, but I believe that there is something else out there. And there are a lot of people who are in that boat. There are a lot of people who are saying, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, whatever it is, it doesn't work for me. But if I start to piece these things together, and I can still believe in a higher power, I might not be able to define what a higher power is, but it's just something that is more intelligent, more powerful than I am, and all of that. And so, and even that that there's a spectrum of spirituality. There are people who believe that there is some type of deity, not the Abrahamic God, but a deity out there, the spiritual, that's not related to a religion per se. And then there's people who say, my religion, my spirituality is love. I believe God is love, but God is in everything, all of that. So you got all of that and everything in between. And I don't, and listen, I'm very honest about it. My beliefs are this. I don't believe in any God that we've created, any supernatural figures, any God that we've created. That's from the Abrahamic God to Apollo, whatever. However, I could very well be wrong. And I leave open the possibilities that I could be wrong. But more importantly, I leave open the possibility that all of us could be wrong, and there is something that none of us can define that may be out there. And then maybe there isn't anything at all out there. And then I think recently what I've said to someone is uh, maybe all of us are right. Whatever we believe, like for example, me, I believe when I'm dead, I'm dead, and maybe that's what happens to me when I die. My wife, on the other hand, may believe in being reincarnated, and she believes that this is her last time here. Um, and so maybe that works for her. For those people who believe that they're going to spend eternity in this heaven place and streets of gold and all of that, then maybe that's what happens to them as well. If you're Muslim and you believe that you're going to die and get 72 versions, then that's what happens to you, and so forth and so on. And so the fact that we know so little about everything. When I say little, I'm talking about minute. I mean, there's so much stuff that happens around us outside of our senses that we don't understand. Um, I find it really difficult to say, I know for sure this. I have not seen convincing enough evidence to make me believe in a deity or a God. That's my position. That's where I stand. And if there was one, and he, she, it, whatever, really wanted me to believe in it, it would know exactly the type of evidence that it would need to present to me in order to make me believe. And so that's sort of my position. Leo said right, and Leo said I like Spinoza's God theory. Yeah, yep, exactly. So yeah. Um, so that's what so then you get to the decision, and then let's say that your decision is, okay, I'm going to deconvert. I'm going to go through the full process like I did deconvert. And I've talked to many people who've gone through the deconversion process. And like me, the first step, once you say, okay, I'm going to deconvert, the first thing was you were sort of angry. And I was angry to a point. It was a little bit because I feel like I've been lied to, right? And I had been used. And then it was a little bit like, okay, these people are so wrong who believe in this God and this deity. I'm just going to tell them all what they don't know, right? And so I went through a phase where I was telling everybody what they didn't know. Here's the history of it. And this is even before I went back to school to get a degree in religious studies. I'm telling people because I had done so much reading, so much research. Um, and so, yeah, you go through that. And then the next phase for me and for some other people were, okay, now I'm a know-it-all, right? I know everything. I know everything it is about religion, how we got to this spot, how we got to this space, and all of the kind of stuff. And so you go through that, and then you realize the more you know, the more you don't know. There is so much more out there. And so you go through that. And then you decide on what are you going to do now? What's next? For many believers, at least my experience with believers, is that their faith becomes a large part of their identity. Social media, their tag is, lover of Christ, follower of Christ, child of God, woman of God, man of God. No matter what they do to make a living, no matter if it's nefarious or no matter if it's clean and safe, they're wearing a cross to symbolize their belief in God. I know a lot of it is fashionable, but still, many of these people, most of these people, not all of them, still believe in some kind of God or whatever. And so you have to decide. So what's my position? And up until recently, most atheists, most non-believers, especially in the African American community, have decided that they would just stay silent about their disbelief. Because, like Michael and many others, you didn't want to, you knew that you would run the risk of being ostracized by family and friends. And for a lot of people, that's just something that they didn't want to deal with. Even on a more serious note, there were people who I know personally who said, if my job, found out that I was not a believer, it could cost me my job, my career. If people find out that I was an atheist or a non-believer, it could really, really be detrimental to my way of living. The way I make a living. I have a friend from high school um, who follows me on social media all the time, and he would be laughing and cackling with all the other people when I would make comments about not being a believer anymore, and posting information and facts and all of that. And they would come on and be critical of the things that I was saying. And he was one of them. Him and several others then would turn around and DM me and say, you know what? I've been thinking along these same lines for years. I just can't come out and say it. And this guy, one guy in particular, he works for a church. And so he said, hey, that's my income. So I can't come out. And so those of you know that there are organizations like the Clergy Project. If you've never heard of the Clergy Project is an organization for pastors now, and other members of the clergy who are still on Sundays and Saturdays, still standing in a pulpit and speaking the things that they've always been speaking. They're talking about their love for God and how God is real and relationship and the religion and all of that. But in reality, they are no longer believers. And so I cannot remember his last name, but he's with the um, Freedom from Religion Foundation. He's him and his wife run that. They started that, but he also started the clergy project is what it's called. And there are thousands of members secretly, privately in this clergy project. So every Sunday or Saturday, get up and put on their outfit. They go to church. They preach on the pulpit about the greatness and all it is about God. But in reality, they are no longer believers. And the reason why that they still do this is because they have no other way to make a living. This is what they've been doing for so long. They have no other training, no other education, no other way of making a living. And so, because of that, they have to continue to live this facade. They're not authentic to who they are. And I know inside it has to be burning them. But there's an organization called the Clergy Project, and you can do the research on it. Dan Barker, that's his name, Dan Barker from Freedom from Religious Foundation. He runs that. But yeah, and so up until recent. And I think what I'm finding out now is that there are a lot, especially I would say millennials and younger African Americans who are now being open and more vocal about their disbelief. Um, and for the first time, Christians feel challenged. They feel that they're being triggered. And I always oftentimes I say for centuries, you guys have been able to push your religion on all of us. We've created laws, um, norms, everything around religion in this country, especially Christianity, right? And no one, at least from an organized way, in large enough numbers, have pushed back, right? Now, what you're seeing is that a lot of younger people are starting to push back and say, "Listen, that's not me. I don't believe in that. Even if they still believe, there are certain parts that they say, listen, my friend is gay, and so my friend is not an abomination, right? I've had an abortion. There's nothing wrong with having an abortion if that's my choice, right? I have a choice. I have the option of making that choice, so forth and so on. There are different things that people are picking out, and if they're not doing that, then they're on a wholesale level. They're saying, I'm not a believer. I don't believe in this deity, this God, this cosmic overseer, as I oftentimes will say. Um, and so many Christians are becoming angry that they're getting the pushback. But then, you have to make that decision. So for me, I was fortunate enough to be in a position at the time to where I could become a vocal advocate for this space for us. I wanted to help create a larger space and a larger room because there are a lot of non-believers. I did my graduate dissertation, my graduate thesis on nuns, NONES, which are individuals, and this is a very broad category of people, but it's individuals who still may believe, but they're pretty much apathetic or they haven't been to church in years, all the way to people who are atheists, right? And everything in between. And one of the things that I posited in my thesis was that as this group continued to grow, and it is the largest quote unquote religious demographic in the country, single demographic in the country. As this category continues to grow, then you're going to get more agnostics, more atheists, and more people who are just apathetic to religion. Like, yeah, I believe that there's something out there, but it has no effect on how I live my life. And when we get to that point, and I might be long gone by then, but if we ever get to that point, when we get to that point, then we're able to get away from our laws and public policies being dictated by religion, like you see so in so many places now, in so many different states and even the country collectively. You see so many. Michael said, I believe that he used to live in Cincinnati. Are you talking about Jeremiah Camille? You know what? I think he did, come to think of it. I've seen plenty of his videos. As a matter of fact, I remember what he used to sell, one of his first videos in a bookstore that I and some friends had. Yeah, absolutely. He, come to think of it, I think he did live in Cincinnati. But I met him in Atlanta. He had been in Atlanta for years. But yeah, you know what? As a matter of fact, I do remember. I also Michael, one of the reason why I'm thinking about that is that one of the people who I always talk about early on, Taisha Essick, who's in part responsible for me being on this show, because she actually is from Cincinnati. And when I first met her, she said she was in Cincinnati and she was looking to find, she was in the process of deconverting. And my videos, some of the first earliest ones that she came across. And so her and I sort of struck up a friendship, and she was in the podcasting space, and so she helped me to sort of get started. But I always send a shout out to her in that. But yeah, and now so I'm thinking about it, I was like, I knew a couple of people from Cincinnati, and she was one, and I'm thinking that Jeremiah was the other one. So yeah, absolutely. So like I said, his first video wasn't really about non-belief at the time. It was more about Black psychology at that point. Yeah, I can see that. So yeah, absolutely. But a great guy. So anyway, so when you get to that point of, should I be an advocate or should I just sit back? Some people who really helped me was some African American friends of mine who are probably, the wife is probably an older, middle-aged millennial. She's probably in the middle. Her husband may be Generation X, but they are atheists in outside of Atlanta, in a very, very, very red conservative part of the metro. If you're familiar with Atlanta, they're in the northwest part of the metro. Um, so they told me about all the steps that I would go through, all the phases, how I would feel. But I asked them, I said, so how do you guys deal with it? What do you do? They said, we just don't talk about it. They said it really doesn't come up. They say it may come up from time to time with family. Um, Even they've raised their kids to sort of be, neutral. Let them get out there and experience what they want to experience. I think they're sort of a blended family. I think the husband had kids prior to the meeting, and I think his oldest, I think, still lives with the mother, and so they kind of do the whole church thing. But I think for the kids that live in the house with them, they don't go to church, so they kind of let their kids sort of figure it out on their own. But they were very instrumental and very helpful in me understanding. And so you have people who take different routes. Some like me try to become an advocate, do the work, and really stay in this space like I am. Others just say, it's just a part of my life like anything else. If it comes up, and I mention that I do, but they don't lead with it like a lot of believers and a lot of Christians do. But I think you're starting to see more and more people who will readily admit, no, I'm not a believer. No, I don't believe in God. And it's one of the things that I found that was very interesting to me was 2024, when I was doing I was a student teaching, and then I had my own class teaching religious studies to a bunch of undergrads in Atlanta at Georgia State, which is, if anything you know anything about Atlanta, that's in the city. I mean, that's in the middle of the city, right? It's an open campus. It actually is the largest university in the state of Georgia. I think we're about 54,000 students combined. Um, but I was teaching a undergraduate religious studies class, and to my surprise, there were a lot of, I guess they were generation, what are they, Z? Um, yeah, I think Generation Z or younger or whatever. To my surprise, there were many students who were not religious. There were students who had never, they said, well, who's this? What's this character? Who's this Jesus character? And I was just blown away. I was shocked. I mean, in the Deep South, in Atlanta, in the school, and these were not. I mean, there were. It wasn't just. It was a very diverse group of students. Some international students, some Asian students, international students, some African students, African American, white students, Hispanic students, but just a very diverse group of students. And there were times where students were really saying, "Oh, tell me more about this Jesus. Oh, that's interesting." Or they would laugh at some of the stories that they would hear. "Oh, for real? A virgin birth, really?" And so I would have never thought that I would come across that in the Deep South in Atlanta at a university. But yeah, so you had that, and so you make the decision on to how you're going to live. Um, I said this. I'm a member of the Secular Student Alliance. I'm actually on the board, and so what we do is that we support college and university students, and even some high schools, a few high schools that want to set up secular organizations on campus. As you know, most universities and colleges have a religious leaning to. I mean, there's some, even with some of the liberal ones, there are not a lot of outward atheists. And so these are for students who want to be part of a secular organization. And we, as a board, I'm on the board of the organization that supports their effort in doing that. At the recent, as I was telling Michael, at the conference in Cincinnati, that was our yearly conference, and I spoke at that conference. But I also had conversations with many of the students, and I said to them, I said, many of you are not active in a lot of secular organizations. Why is that? And their response was, "This is just who we are. We this the circle that we run in, the people that we know, and so we have no need to do extra. This is just who we are." And on the one hand, you're like, "Oh man, I wish they would be more active in the secular organizations." But then on the other hand, you understand, like, "Oh, this is awesome. This is just who they are. This is just them growing up. This is just who part of they are." And so they don't feel the need to be outward about their disbelief. It's just like, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm, whatever it is, however they identify. This is just part of their identification, right? And so I thought it was cool. And so it's one of the things that I learned. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that I first came across you on Seth Andrews' show or FRFF show. Dan Barker, I've never been on Seth Andrews' show, but Dan Barker interviewed me on FRFF. About 4 years now? 4 years ago now. I think my book had just come out, and we talked about the book and some other things. So you may have seen me on that. I've been on a couple of other podcasts. If you've seen, I presented at the largest religious conference, which is the American Religious Conference, twice. I did the national conference, and then I did the um, um, regional conference a few years ago as well. So, and I'm sort of out there. You can find me in different places. But yeah, appreciate that, Michael. Thank you. And so finally, what I want to end with is once we've made that decision to deconvert and go through that process and everything that entails, how do we find community, right? How do we build a new community? And it was I grew up in the Deep South, right? I grew up in Alabama, then I moved to Atlanta, and I spent almost 30 years in Atlanta. I met my wife in Atlanta, who's from upstate New York. But recently, we've moved to just outside of Vegas. It's been a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. And for us, it has been easier out here because people out here, as you may guess, are not as devout. There isn't a church on every corner. But more importantly, people, at least what I found, and again, this is my experience, are a lot less judgmental. They're a lot freer in their expression. They certainly are a lot less religious. religion plays a much smaller role in their life, generally speaking. There are African Americans who are always devout because they came from different places. But it's been a lot easier to create and find community with people here. When you talk to people and you tell them that you don't do when they, first of all, those of you who grew up in the deep south or live in the deep south, you know that one of the questions that we joke about all the time is that people never ask you um, if you go to church. They ask you what church you attend, right? Because the assumption is that everybody attends church in the south, and that's pretty much at least it was until recently, right? Since I've been in Vegas, I've been keeping count. Since I've been out here, I've only had two people to ask me if I attend church or what church I attend. Um, and so it's been great. It's been awesome. But I kind of lost my train of thought. But so yeah, so in building that community, it's been easier for me to sort of blend in. Now, I will say this: I've been somewhat active in my fraternity, my African American fraternity, and so it is again full of African American men who are devout and religious. And when I go to meetings, we begin with a prayer, we end with a prayer. There's a chaplain, which is a great, great guy. These are great guys. There are a couple of brothers in the chapter who know that I'm not a believer, but I have not made a grand pronouncement that I'm not a believer. I just kind of, when we do the prayer, I just kind of bow my head. I just sort of go along with it, and that's part of this whole, building community. If you're African American for certain, and you associate with other African Americans, it is next to impossible, especially while you're living in this country, to completely get away from it, right? So, there's another group that I'm a part of. These are, black men of Henderson. We sort of get together, especially during football season, watch some of the games. We hang out sometimes. It's sort of a support, group that you talk to, whatever, just a bunch of guys, African American men. And we had the conversation about religion at one time, and then they found out I wasn't religious. But it was, no big deal. It wasn't like, oh man, we got to stay away from you. It was like, oh, okay, I'm a believer, but you're not. That's good. We could. So that's sort of refreshing. But you're never going to get away from it as long as you associate with or talk to, or or in a circle of African Americans, because it's in our blood. It's just who we are as a collective group, right? But it is a lot less out here. And so what I say to those of you who are searching, find your tribe. I've seen communities on Facebook, on some of the social media platforms. There are black non-believing communities. There are black atheist communities that you can find on social media. If you're in the Atlanta area or any other city that has a black non-believer chapter, this is a organization, Black Non-Believers, ran by Mandisa Thomas, who's a friend of mine. I'm supposed to be speaking at her conference this year in Atlanta, so we'll see how that goes. But um, I just read your comment, Michael. Michael said that he's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. Michael, we all make at least one mistake in our life. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, so so it's all right. But I had a lot of Kappa friends, man. I have some really, actually, probably one of my well, two of my best friends are Kappas, to be honest. And actually, Michael, one of the first guys I came across who had been a Christian, and ironically, he went to a Christian camp, summer camp, and he deconverted, right? And he's from the South, but he's a Kappa. He's a great friend of mine. He's been here to Vegas and visit us, him and his wife. He's a Kappa, but he's one of the first atheists that I met that was out open, like, I'm an atheist. I was deep into the church. I was going to be a minister, and I went to a Christian camp, a summer camp, and it changed me. So yeah, but glad to have you, brother. D9 love, D9 love. I'm gonna give you that, brother. But anyway, so when we talk about the process of finding a community, man, For us as African American, it is difficult. I remember having a conversation with Mandisa, Black non-believers, and I said to Mandisa, this was early on, and I told the story of how I knew the predecessor of her organization, who decided that she could no longer be the face of the organization because it would hurt. She's an attorney. She was my business. She was our business attorney for years, but she stopped being the face of that organization because she felt that it would hurt her business. And so when I talk about these things, I talk about it from a real life experience and a real life perspective. But anyway, one of the things that Mandisa said to me, she was like, we have a need to have our own separate organizations because although you would think that non-believers, people in the atheist community, agnostic community, that they would be less bigoted and less prejudiced, it is the same way in every other organization. Where we agree on is our disbelief in a God, but everything else is pretty much all over the place. And so her experience was that she had been to some of these organizations with very few African Americans, and she ran into people who were bigoted or racist or whatever. And so it was it's not like any more, any less. It's just that, and so she felt that she would have that she needed to create or be part of this organization. The problem is that we don't have many. Her organization is probably the most well known and the largest of any sort of Black non-believing secular organization per se, and all the rest of them are at least ran and organized by non-Blacks. Although the American Atheist Association, I think it's American, or is it American Humanist? American Humanist Association. The president of the organization right now is Candace Gorman, who is a African American woman who wrote the Exodus Project. Her book is called the Exodus, Ebony Exodus Project, something like that. But anyway, it talks about Black women and Black women who leave religion and all of that. So her name is Candace Gorman. Look up her book, her information. She's the president of American Humanist Association, I think. It's not, yeah, American Humanist Association. But there's very few. I know most of the players. Dr. Anthony Penn, Dr. Christopher Cameron, Dr. Shakiva Hutchinson, Candace Gorman, Jeremiah Camaro, myself. There's just a handful of others, but there are a lot more African American non-believers out there. And so we have to find a way to create a much larger community where we can connect. But again, online, local organizations, even the organizations that are not African American. Like I'm part of I'm part of Atheist Roundtable here. I am the only African American. But I've been treated really well. I've not had an issue whatsoever. Same thing with Sunday Assembly, which is sort of a secular church organization. I've actually spoken at the Sunday Assembly, again, being the only Black person. I talked about the plausibility of a secular society, and I documented it with information about other countries and societies in the world that are secular in nature, who are doing extremely well. They're very efficient. They're very advanced. Countries like Sweden and Denmark and some of the other Scandinavian countries. And so I did a presentation for them. And so I've never had an issue. I've never had an issue. But I would be, as a person of a certain age, I would be remiss if I was to say that those things don't exist in these organizations just because someone declares himself to be secular or atheist or agnostic. And so we have to find those communities, find people like us, the people that I've mentioned. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I think I left my email address at the very top of the messages there. And so, so we just have to do a better job of creating community, finding our people. You may have to align yourself with people who are, spiritual, but don't necessarily believe in the Abrahamic God, and sort of go from there. People who are also searching and deconverting, or you can sort of create your own community. But one of the questions that I face oftentimes that I don't really have an answer to is, if the church in our community go by the wayside, what happens to the social element that the church, how the church brought us together from a social? I mean, there are other organizations and groups that you can be a part of, but our community every Sunday was a gathering place. even outside of Sundays, the church was the gathering place. We found our common niche and our common community within the church and religion and Christianity. And I'll be the first to say that is a really, really hard thing to fix or to replace. I think our younger people are doing a much better job of doing that and replacing that. But for those of us who might be a little bit older, that is difficult. And so that's pretty much what I have. Um, but look up those people: Dr. Christopher Cameron, Dr. Anthony Penn, Jeremiah Camaro, Dr. Shakiva Hutchinson, Candace Gorman, myself, Neo X. We're in this space on the podcast, and there's some others. Um, all of these people have different names, and I just go in and watch their videos. And then someone asked me, "Have you heard of? Are you familiar with?" And I was like, "Nah." And they showed me a picture. I said, "Oh yeah, I'll follow him or her." So I need to do a better job, especially with the podcasters and the people that's on TikTok, those kind of platforms. I need to do a better job of when I'm following these people to get their names so that I can share with you guys, because there are plenty. There are a lot of younger people in this space, podcasters, TikTokers that are out there that I need to just at least I need to start writing down their names, because I follow a lot of them. And they have a tremendous amount of information. It is good. So let me end with these last. Michael said, my best man at my first marriage is a Q dog. My roommate was a Q dog from college. We grew up in the neighborhood together. He was a Q. He's a Q. He was a judge. Became a judge. A good friend of mine. You know, my boy was in the club together. Did all of that. He was a Q. His father was a Q. As a matter of fact, after I became an alpha, I found out that my biological father was a Q. Never met him, never knew him. And a lot of people thought I was going to be one by the way I acted in college. But yeah, so I have that. My Sunday school teacher who was responsible, one of the people responsible for getting me into college was a Kappa. So I always obliged that, thankful to that. My drama and English teacher was an Alpha. The first person that hired me out of college was a Q. He hired me he hired me instead of hiring his frat brother, because he thought that I was a better fit for his company. And I asked him after I got the job, it was me and one of your frat brothers who had a higher GPA slightly. He just said, "Yeah, I know he's my frat brother." He said, "But I just thought you were a better fit." So that showed me the integrity and the kind of man that he was. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah. So much D9 love. Let's see. Maurice Wheatley say Ichapod, ICHAPOD. I guess that's is that a podcaster, Maurice? He said, which is the ex-Christian rapper Fanatic. Okay, I think I've heard of Fanatic. Okay, good deal. So yeah, so absolutely. So I hope that you all got something out of this. I enjoyed doing this today. This was awesome. Again, be safe, take care of yourself, try to find community, tell everybody about the show. Michael, was so glad to have you first time. Please come back. Please come back. You're always welcome. We're going to have you on the show soon, because I want to hear about your experience. And I know the audience wants to hear about your experience being a seasoned person who African American who got out of the faith from that generation, which is extremely rare. The rest of you, Maurice Wheatley, thank you. He's a podcaster. Thank you for joining us. Let's see, Neo X, my buddy. Thank you, Neo. Appreciate it so much. Christine, who's always here, thank you. Hope I didn't miss anybody. And those of you out there who are listening but did not make a comment, I'm certainly appreciative of all of you. Again, tell a friend, tell your enemy. We can have dialogue on this show. I've done it before. So I don't have a problem with that. But in the meantime, you guys stay safe, enjoy yourself, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Out later.